I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Thursday, September 1st, 2022. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Thursdays, a group of friends hook up just to talk, to kick it, to say what's on our minds, and to challenge, support, examine each other's ideas, thoughts, and suggest things that you should be looking at and thinking about as well. Today, I want to say hi to my regular colleague every day, Brenda Lyle-Gray. Brenda joins me as co-host of the program 5 days a week. Brenda and I always remind people, go back, we were kindergarten classmates in Kansas City. So we've known each other since about age 5. And it's wonderful to be in a situation where we are talking every day, talking about the world that we walked into in 1947 and how it looks to us now in 2022, how it looks to us in the future, what are our obligations, our duties, our responsibilities for authoring that future. Pleased to have my colleague and friend and young elder, Jonathan Palmer, with us today. Jonathan Palmer heads the Hallie Q. Brown Community Center in St. Paul. It's one of the legacy institutions, the pillars of stability and continuity for our community, a settlement house organization like there are in many organizations, in many communities around the country. Hallie Q. Brown has been a lighthouse and a pillar for stability and hope and resourcefulness in the Black community in St. Paul and actually in Twin Cities. And also Angela Rose is here. Angela Rose Myers, I call her. She's got more names than that we were saying before the show, but Angela represents, from my point of view, the power of a youthful bravado, a daringness, a clarity, and a fierceness that is informed, intelligent, clear, and precise, and willing to say, what things are in ways that are unmistakable, unambiguous, and with a confidence that is both admirable and awesome. So, Angela, good to see you. Angela's mom and dad are friends of mine, heroes of mine, and so I can tell you that our relationship stems from the huge respect that I have for them and their leadership in the community as educators and thought leaders. And Angela simply is in the middle of that stream doing the work. And Angela, good to see you. Let's bring everybody in and start the conversation. So we often start with the question, what's on your mind? I'll go to Brenda first. Brenda, what's on your mind?
Go to someone else.
Go to somebody else, okay.
I'm still just spent behind the Republican attitude of, well, we want a master to look over documents, although they were spilled all over the floor. And we're not for sure that we're going to indict him because that's never been done before. And I'm just saying, this man is a crook. What does that say about you? What do you say to your children? How do you sleep at night? That's all it's unreal. So I'm going to come and I'm going wait until the hearings, but I don't know if that's going to change anything. I just don't. I don't understand the thinking. When we went through it in the late 60s, we knew where they were coming from. Point blank, you are Black, we don't like you, we don't want you to succeed. They've been wavering back and forth since all of this began. The man's a crook. Put him in jail. I'm sorry. Next person.
Thank you, Brenda. I've got some comments to respond, but before I do, I'll come back. Let's go to Angela next. Angela, what's on your mind?
Yes. Well, in breaking news last night, the Alaskan special election happened, where Sarah Palin lost to Mary Peltola, the Democrat. So, that last night was a history making night also for ranked choice voting, right? We don't see a lot of places that have ranked choice voting statewide. And so, that's a little
Would you say that's a plus?
that's a plus. That's a positive to Brenda.
And she was shocked, Angela Rose, that she lost. She was shocked. I'm sorry. I'm going to quit, boss. I'm through.
No, I mean, I think
that makes it all the more better.
We have ranked choice voting in Minneapolis, right? And that's been very successful, as well as surprising at times. And you can get surprising results from ranked choice voting, but it doesn't mean that it is any less fair, something like that. There's a lot in ranked choice voting, right? But if you decide on it, it's very fair, and it does go to how people feel. Yeah. But this win, you can say, is a ranked choice voting win more than anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back and ask you to explain ranked choice voting, how it works. We're doing it here in Twin Cities, but not statewide, I believe. I think Minneapolis does it, and St. Paul, I believe, does ranked choice voting as well. And so before we get done, walk us through the principles and the concept and the history of that. Jonathan Palmer, brother, how you doing, man? What's on your mind?
I am doing pretty good. I also was excited about that win because, Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, first Native woman for representing Alaska, first, though, is that not the first woman in that position as well?
In 50 years.
In 50 years, and Democrat. I mean, it's historic all the way around. I was excited about that. I am also very right there with Brenda about how people can continue to even be a question, and the amount of spin that is going on. And what is just fascinating is seeing people get their news from different sources, and you flip over to one source and it's talking about how much of a crook. The other source is talking about how persecuted. But what I really love is how much they keep tripping themselves up every time they go to court. Every time he puts out a statement, he puts out something that says, "Oh, everybody, yes, those are my doubts." Did you lose me for a minute?
We did for a second anyway, but you're back.
I just said that. I'm really. I find it just hilarious, just how many times they contradict themselves every time they come out with a new statement. So that's where I'm at.
They ran out of excuses.
So my thinking, Brenda, the comment I made as you were speaking is, do we remember, or should we remember, the concept of honor among thieves? You question why the nation is hesitant to move in and under the name of the rule of law, under the name of civil authority or civil, or under ethics, or under the moral codes. You wonder why the hesitation. It seems that if there ever was an opportunity for morality and ethics and honor to align to produce a critical examination and an indictment, this seems like it. And what you're questioning is why the equivocation. Why is there a almost farcical
that's a good word,
response of surprise or questioning or being amazed? And so I raised the question, the thought popped in my head, that's the phrase, honor among thieves. And this is a question of Donald Trump saying, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. That's what Trump is saying to America, and even to the Democrats, even to those we hope would be righteous and in alignment with the principles of democracy, with the idea of moral correctness, and with the idea of ethical behavior. he's saying and challenging all of them. And in doing so, the challenge behind all of that is that statement, that feeling, that sentiment. I may be wrong, but which of you is clean? Which of you has clean hands? And ultimately, the fear proposition is that if you undress me, you'll be undressed next. So at what point is unraveling the Donald Trump story unraveling all of the sins of America? That's the question.
And that came up
therefore the hesitation.
That came up last night with Don Lemon.
Well, before I go on, somebody said, I'm not sure if it was on this program or some other program, somebody was saying, it was on TV, it was Charlemagne the God. Thought it was funny that on one day, Trump's wife died and buried at Mar-a-Lago. And then a week later, the FBI raids looking for documents. He said, exhume the body. The documents may be in the casket.
I heard that.
And what we know is that in today's news or yesterday's news, the government is saying that there was intentional effort to hide the documents, that they attested in sworn documents that everything had been turned over. And after that, they discovered things had not been turned over. So one more, brick, Brenda, as you're saying, one more knock on this door, but still.
But the bottom line, last night when I was watching Don Lemon, they are afraid of him. They fear him physically, every way you can imagine. And this one guy who said, he listed all of the sins of Trump. He said they are scared of him. And I said, where does he get all this power of fear? And Kevin McCarthy sounded just like that. We're going to wait and see if the Trump appointed judge will give us the right to have a master.
So he's leading the judge, right? Telling the judge what to do.
Wait for the master.
The fear comes from the fact of moving away from what traditional campaigning is. A number of them have gone to the point of money pays the way and takes the direction. And Trump is able to rile up a base of people who do not examine, do not look at facts, do not look at information. They believe whatever he says. And that's just it. It doesn't matter what facts you have. It doesn't matter what rules you have. If he says it, it must be true. And part of that is because of the fact that Donald Trump has made white supremacy fashionable and acceptable to a lot of Americans. He's brought it and raised it and normalized it. With the 4 years he was in office, that was his most significant accomplishment. And that's why you see so many people being emboldened and coming out and following with this line, because there's a money train there. There is also people who will turn on you and get out. They're doing all sorts of strategic things to put people in election, the election judges. They're getting people who are election deniers to be in election judges. And it's all strategic and a game. And it's a race between what they're doing for the next set of elections and how fast the justice system is going to go ahead and proceed. And as this stuff comes out, I love watching the conservatives who just keep spinning, that all they do is find out a way to defend, and the story keeps changing about what excuse it is this week about why it was unfair. And I've seen some really competent people who you say, all right, look, the FBI found all this. They said that they have it. And their response is, yeah, that's good, but Joe Biden is now not bringing the country together. He promised to bring the country together, and now he's talking about MAGA. So let's talk about that. They want to focus on that instead of illegal acts by a president. Yes, the actions that they're taking are unprecedented because the acts that he took were unprecedented. So
let's bring in our colleague, my friend from Bahia, Brazil, Maestre Yogi Sena. Yogi works as our editor in Brazil and translating a series that we're doing in the section of Inside News called Afrodescendientes. At his suggestion, we bring Yogi on. First of all, we modified our intent, our previously established bilingual publication or section. We created it, conceived it as a Spanish and English set of stories, sort of acknowledging that there were lots of Black people, lots of African people in the Spanish-speaking world, that in fact, through the Caribbean and South America, we simply are just not conscious here in North America about the expanse, the breadth and depth of our people throughout the hemisphere. And so what was Spanish and English at Yogi's leadership and suggestion became Spanish and English and Portuguese. He speaks Portuguese in Brazil, as well as Spanish and other languages as well. And at his continued suggestion, we added to the program Yoruba, and we added again last week at his suggestion Swahili. So let me show you how it looks. This is the paper that's coming up in a couple of days. I'm going to share my screen, and this is a story called the. Are you all seeing it yet or not? Uh-oh. There we go. Yeah,
it's great.
So this is the story is written by Jesus Chucho Garcia, an editor working for us out of Colombia, but who's traveling, actually working out of Venezuela. He's Venezuelan, but traveling to Colombia. He's traveled to Spain to present and reporting on that as well. Has experience as a diplomat in Africa for the nation of Venezuela, and he's writing a series of stories. This is the fourth in the series. The story, the English version, says New Colombian government seeks internal peace and the end of border conflicts. And what we've done, again, assisted by and motivated, inspired by Yogi Sena, is present the same story in 7 different languages: the original Spanish, then English, then Portuguese, then Yoruba, then Somali, then Swahili, and in French. Yogi's idea as well. And so, Yogi, thank you for pushing, and thank you for prodding us, and for giving us the idea that it makes sense that we should use this technology to create engagement, conversation among our people all over the world. Because at the end of the day, this has the potential, you know, so we print 35,000 copies of our newspaper here in Twin Cities every week. Big deal. It is a big deal, but I'm saying big deal, 35,000. But the internet, the digital, allows us to generate these stories to our people all over the planet. And so I say that to also encourage anybody listening anywhere in the world who uses one of these languages to jump on this and help us grow it, help us grow engagement, and to give us feedback, criticism. You like it, you hate it, but talk about it, and let's create this multilingual, multi-site conversation about our story, our histories, our aims, our aspirations, and beyond. Brother Yogi, good afternoon, man. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Wow. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. Greetings from Bahia.
Good to see you as always, man. So again, thank you, man, because I'm loving what we're doing here. The other influence here is that I read these stories by Aikwe Irma, and this week is different from the last week because last week we presented each story kind of vertically, but we added one more language, making it 7. When we had just 6, it was like 3 on one page and 3 on the other page, but we couldn't do that to be even, balanced. So I asked my art director, Sonny Yang, let's do this in the order that they've done it in books written by the people at Per Ankh Publishing. Per Ankh is that initiative, the collaborative led by Aikwe Irma. And I'll show you what that was about. Like, I sent this to her. This is a book called On Love's Sublime, and it's a book of poetry about 4,000 years old. And it says it's a multilingual translation of an ancient African love poem. And the back shows you how it works. And all the pages are the same, but the back tells you that each line is going to be in Akan, Bambara, English, Francais, Hausa, Congo, and on down. So we're saying, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's try it and see what happens. And of course, we know that most people are not going to speak more than 1 or 2 languages, but this suggests that we all have access to understanding knowledge in a variety of idioms and languages. And if we simply begin in time, we don't know what we can master and engage. And even Yoji, as Sonny and I were putting this together last night before we sent it to the printer, there are certain edits we have to make. And I don't know these languages, right? But I used editing tools and found the word that one word needed to be changed, was because the original story said something is going to happen in a few days, but this has already happened. So I had to change the tense to make it correct, and I had to go through an online editor to make it. But in doing so, I learned something just in having to do that. So I'm saying that that's important, and that if people start looking at this, they'll bit by bit over time learn some things and learn about how accessible all these languages and idioms are. Yoji, go ahead, man.
Yes, you are right. We are multilingual in our essence, and a product of diversity and multiculturality. The enslaved population that came is multiple, and as well we are in the present.
What's new going on right now? You got an election coming up in Brazil in a few weeks, right?
Oh yeah, things here are heating up. It is as tragicomic as it is in the U.S. and sometimes with a little bit more of a twist. As I was saying to a friend today, I don't know. It's like a bad movie, a bad B movie things here as far as in the politics, and it's the same mind frame as it is in the United States. There is extreme polarization, and in one side of the spectrum there is these people that is absolutely mindless. No matter what the truth is, they will keep defending those right-wing racist people.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the United States of America.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll behave.
It is true. Don't be sorry. I mean, it's sorry for. I forgot now the adjective of sorry, but it is something to them be sorry, But to us, it is many times we do suffer the consequences of this nonsense that has come historically, and now it's just in your face to everybody to see. So just doesn't see who don't have their eyes open.
How much attention does the average Brazilian pay to the Trump trauma, the Trump drama in the U.S.? Is that something that international news or Brazilian news is covering?
You said it right the first time, though, Al. Trump trauma.
Yeah.
Yes, they do pay attention. I would say people that are interested in politics and who watch political shows, that is just it's a snippet, even though that every day in the news, whatever happened in the United States comes in the national day, a national news at night, whatever events that are significant, we do talk about here in the press. But the average citizen don't have a clue, and they don't pay attention to the American politics. You know, everybody knows about Trump because it was such a traumatic experience. So we all do have awareness who is the character.
How much awareness is there about either cooperation or conflict within the South American communities of nations? The conflict between Venezuela and Colombia, for instance, other conflicts that are territorial. How much awareness is there? You had the refugees between Colombia and Venezuela for a long time, and the opposition in Venezuela with the support of Trump trying to overturn the Venezuelan government. How much discussion is there of these national challenges in and among Southern Hemispheric nations is there?
Well, what I perceive is people are much more, maybe the word focused or interested in the local politics, even though we are aware here because there is a lot of Venezuelan refugees here, right? Even in this, I live in a village for 3,000 people, and even here there is Venezuelan refugees. So, but Brazil has a similar posture and attitude, right? A lot of people, it's a classic comparative case, Brazil, United States. So Brazil, it's very hegemonic in South America. So it's more, the other nations look to us as, instead of us being interested in them, you know. As in my travels in the Spanish-speaking countries in South America, they look up to us as a form to say we are like a parameters for them, right? And we do have commercial practice that are as imperialist as the United States towards the other Latin American countries, you know. But the average people, they are interested. You know, there is people going through hunger here in Brazil. It's one of the consequences of the present government and its handling of the pandemic. So there's people that, the protein intake, basically now it's eggs, you know, and people are buying carcasses of cows to scrape the leftover meat that is in there and to make soups. Okay. So the situation for some people here, the lower part, the population economically is being very difficult.
Last time we talked, you said that Brazil, of recent, has the population, over 50% of it has described itself now as African or Black. Talk about that. What does that mean?
Well, it's an advancement as far as consciousness about themselves or ourselves. But again, as I mentioned also, right, this is the first time that more than half of the candidates for political positions have been self-declared Black. But in many cases, here it's this classification. It's self-classification. I can tell people that I'm white, or you know, I can choose to be white in a certain way. Like in the census, I could, even though that looks very absurd, I could punch in the column that I'm white in the census. So there is, in many ways, as far as the general population, it is this advancement of the process of conscientization of its our own being. But here still, was today or yesterday, we were talking about here there is the classification of being pardo. I don't know if you ever heard to be a pard. I don't know if there is the word in English, pard. It's an indefinite color that is not a color and it's not a race, but it is a it is something that's kind of, I must say, gray. It's not white or it's not black. So this is the reality of here. Because it's still the general level of education of the population is not high, right? Those advancements, as I also mentioned in a few programs back, we certainly replicate and go behind as far as social achievements of the United States. So it's almost a mirror effect. Whatever happened in the United States in a few years percolates here. So yes, the Black people population is much more leaning forward than ever before. The Black population is vocal as ever before, and that also is provoking the same backlashes that it does in the United States.
Angela, I see you as not only an activist, but a beneficiary of the investment of your parents and of our generation. Just as we are beneficiaries of those that preceded us, we stand on their shoulders, and I believe you stand on ours. But as a young person for which there are high expectations, and who has high expectations of herself, what does your generation think about? How does it handle the change it is seeking in place wherever you are in this country? How does that connect to this whole notion of change globally? I think the fallacy of the past was that we could integrate into America and enjoy being American while the American idea continued to be part of the oppression of third world people, Black people in particular, in the global arena, and that we would be able to make the separation that our founders made to maintain the duplicitous strategy of calling for and claiming and cherishing freedom, while at the same time we did the absolute opposite. So our national change was navigated with an intent of not surrendering power, but it bringing us in a way that it didn't threaten the power of white people, even if it meant giving some of us a little power some of the time, or the appearance or illusion of power. And so I think that your group, more than ours, is questioning the entire ball of wax. I'll stop there. Just give me your thoughts, your feelings.
Yeah, so I think that due to the internet and social media, our generation is more connected to Black people around the world than ever before. I think about, on the topic of Brazil, when Marielle Franco was assassinated, it was Black Lives Matter US. The organization in the US actually released a letter saying that they had, in fact, met with Marielle Franco and previously. And so, that goes to the breadth of the transnational conversations that are happening when in Tigray, the human rights issues that are happening there in Tigray and Eritrea, and the large East African population of young folk in Minneapolis actually started to protest. And even Leslie Redmond, she was on her social media talking about the issues in Tigray. And she had some 15, 14, 16-year-old young activists, Black activists that live in Minneapolis, live in Minnesota, but have connections to the Tigray region. And they were discussing what their families were going through. right? I mean, there's really never been, and she was doing this on Instagram Live, right? So there's really never been that same connection and that same understanding. And I mean, I've never seen it to the same extent of where Black people are seeing each other. And it's not just a US centric of like Black Americans, we're gonna go to Ghana, we're gonna go to Liberia and then replace the class system that's there. Or we are going to be just Black capitalists in these other South American regions and replicate the neoliberal, neo-colonialist structures that are already there. So, you know, this is a time where people are talking about capitalism, and you know, even on it's called Clubhouse, or I think it was actually Twitter Spaces. They had Jay-Z on, and Jay-Z was talking about, they're calling me a capitalist, like this is a bad thing. And then the kids came up, they're like, it is a bad thing. You know, you can be from the projects. You can be, you know, who you are, and you can rap about it. But when we're talking about structural change, when we're talking about changing the structures for all Black people, you being a billionaire doesn't do anything for us over here.
What did he say about that? What was his response? Or did he respond?
He said this is, you know, that people have changed the game. You know, they said that he was saying how he grew up, that being successful and being respected meant you had to have a lot of money. And I think it was just that he was speaking from a different lens than what the kids have now. And I think that that is something that happens often. And I've seen that same conversation happen in my community, where, you know, some folks are just focused on what we need to do is just make 1 million Black people millionaires, right? And then that will solve the issues of the racial wealth gap, where, you know, that is not actually what's going to solve society's issues. Or, you know, they have in Minnesota, we have this fallacy that a lot of the Black people came to Minnesota. And I just read a report yesterday that the Black population has increased 59% in Minnesota since 2010. That Black people came to Minnesota because it's a welfare state, right? And that's why we all get the bad Black people. And so that's something that I've heard, right? And I said, well, even if they came here for social welfare services, we should make sure our social welfare services are serving everybody, period, right? And we don't get bad people. No, that's a fallacy, right? What we need to do is when people get here, we need to support them. So if you're looking at an issue through a lens that is rooted in white supremacy, you're going to see Black people as the problem. Well, Black people aren't the problem. What the problem is the white supremacist structures that we've been placed under.
In the mouth of babes.
Go ahead, Brenda.
No, I wanted to say, to ride off of Angela, I saw Barack Obama last night, and he was so upset behind Blacks being used to move the agenda of the Republicans. So Black Republicans like Tim Scott, and Angela, you might know of a few. Tim Scott's face was the first one to talk about how unfair this is. And I'm sitting up here saying, your brother, he doesn't like you. He doesn't care about you. He's using all of these Black Republicans to say we're not that bad. And Barack said, oh no, we got to stop this, you know? And it's just what Angela said. It's not just because Minnesota is a welfare state. It's, you know, what are we doing? Period.
You know, Brenda, it goes even deeper than that. He hires Black people to come stand behind at the rallies. And, you know, college students especially, you know, paying them money to come stand behind. So whenever you see those rallies and you see a few of them, there's one guy who is at like everyone. I don't know how much he's getting, but he shows up. He is always there.
But could they be thinking,
they're thinking about money.
It goes beyond just Republicans, because
Right.
there are, in our community, I have seen it, and this is something that I believe, right? Call me a conspiracy theorist, but there are paid people in this movement to break this movement apart, right? And we know historically that that's happened, but they're still around, and they're Black, and they, they're the ones who love to be on, the news, tearing down every Black leader that they see that has some progressive ideas moving forward. And so, I mean, it's one thing if you stick to your one issue, right? And this is your one issue that you have, and that's fine. You want to make, you believe in, more money for capitalism, whatever. You're a Black capitalist. That's one thing. But it's the people who they seem to be changing positions whenever there is a new Black leader ready to take the charge, right? They seem to be changing what they're saying, what they think, to whatever to go against that Black leader. And that's something where we have to rely on our media literacy. We have to rely on the fact that this movement is stronger than the dissenters. And we have to rely on the fact that you're absolutely right. Because we can talk about it, that means that it's seen. Because we can say, yeah, no, he's paying Black people to be at the rallies, that means that we are not going to be duped anymore. And that's important.
Jonathan, any thoughts, comments?
I think Angela is perfectly right with that. And the fact of the matter is, we have so many people from our community who have fallen under the illusion of inclusion, and they get caught up with status, or they get caught up with power, or they get caught up with just white supremacy on this. It affects Black people too mentally. I mean, there's a whole bunch of pieces on this. I saw somebody had posted something the other day that said that people were getting mad, and this is mostly Republicans, getting mad about the raid on Donald Trump, and we're saying that this could happen to any of you, and it's any of you who have top secret documents from the United States. But they weren't talking about Breonna Taylor and how officers could come in and break in your house and kill you in your bed. They related more to the thought of an ex-president who is so far from them in terms of ideology and means, and thought that was more likely to happen to them, that the FBI would raid their home, than them getting shot by somebody who's kicked in the door. And it just shows disconnect.
Ohio. Too, that, political violence against particularly Black folk who are running for elected office is extremely high right now. High in the US and also in Brazil. And I read actually for Black women who are running for political office in Brazil, Mr. Siena, if you could speak to the dangers that Black women who are running for political office face. It said 95% of Black women have faced some sort of political violence, which comes from harassment, death threats, letters, to actual physical worries about their physical safety.
That's absolutely true. Here, people are still a little bit more raw, and they go for actions. And of course, they identify the most vulnerable, and they go for Black women very often, and LGBT alphabet people too, that they are now also getting involved in politics, trying to run for office. They are subject of violence. As I say, Brazil is like a mirror of the United States, but in certain cases, a few years behind, some others a few decades behind, and some others a century behind, right? And for example, just deviate a little bit of the subject. Today, this morning, we got to know there is a case in the news of an employer that decided to torture his employee because did some mistakes. Of course, that employee is black, and the person in their mind thought that's the way to teach a lesson to this person, be honest or whatever, presumably. But it is violence here is rampant.
So that employer felt entitled and felt that he or she was in the right in applying physical torture, personal violence as a reprimand or corrective measure. I think you told us too, Yoji, in one of the previous conversations that, it's not talked about, but in Brazil, and I think in some cases probably in this country as well, the practice of slavery, sometimes by different names, still exists.
Oh, yeah, it's common. It's common. They keep discovering people in slavery situations. They are confined to places many times, or they are in rural areas, or they are domestic slavery, where the victims are black women that provide domestic services. There are cases in the last 2-3 months of some ladies, man. I feel emotional right now just to remember and describe it to you. But a 74-year-old grandma, well, she didn't have the possibility to be grandma because she was enslaved for 50 years. And in a upper middle class apartment, because here we still have that custom of having domestic employees, and this is common, pretty common. It's called work analog to slavery here. Even they still do use euphemisms to just use slavery. But it's work analog to slavery, and it's very common, principally in the domestic realms. And they say, "Oh, they're just like family." We treat them like family, and of course, they have food, and but they live in the back room because it's something here. Most apartments in the building that we see here, there's a lot of buildings. People live a lot in buildings. It's called the service room, because that was for the domestic employee, and all the finish the construction finish, the quality of the cement in the wall, the appliance in the bathroom is subpar. This is common. Those people that are a little bit more entitled now, they are or more enlightened, they are converting those rooms to their office or their home offices. But here, when you say you look apartments, they have 3-4 bedrooms plus the service room. That is the room behind the kitchen, in the door. Because here in the buildings, we have social elevator and they have the service elevator. Guess what? Who goes in the service elevator?
And they're still coming in the back door.
Exactly.
In 2022.
Exactly.
Wow. I'm sorry. I said
no,
I was
right ahead. No. Angela, more.
They should be sorry, my dear, not you.
And so the train of thought, Angela, you raised the question.
Yes, I was just thinking about Ilhan Omar as well in the U.S. and the death threats that she's received, as well as when we had 2 Black trans counsel folks, Philippe Cunningham, a Black trans man, and Andrea Jenkins, a Black trans woman, who had to receive private security, right, because of the death threats, because of the just simply, I guess, the rising in violence. And we're seeing it now even amongst, what Leslie Graham said, around the FBI, right? And I wonder which FBI agents, which FBI representatives are going to be targeted. It's going to be ones from marginalized communities. And I just think about how, when we're talking about representation, we have an election coming up. We want people to run, right? But running as a young Black person now in the US is really running for your life, right? You really are going to be faced up against harassment. During my time as vice president at the Minneapolis NAACP and president of the Minneapolis NAACP, I got threats. I got phone calls on my personal phone of people asking where they can go kill those N-words, right? Where I was, all of these things, right? They were phone calls, a phone call to my personal phone. And this is the almost expectation that folks have when they are a public figure. But it also is under the through line is that is a scary prospect for our democracy, right? That is the through line is that this is where our democracy is right now. This is where the state of our world is right now, where the prospect of being politically active, just an activist, like, I'm just an activist. I just say what I feel and I just try to get policies done through the democratic process, right? That's something where now I have to think about my own personal, the safety of my family. That's scary. And that's scary for anybody who wants to and should be the best qualified to run for office. They should want to, and they should feel safe doing it.
Jonathan, any thoughts, feedback?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's sad is that's what politics has devolved to. That they cannot take the fact that we are running for office, we are qualified, we are capable, we are often the best candidates, and so they have resorted to violence and intimidation and the most ridiculous kind of things. I look down to my brother, friend, and classmate from Morehouse, Reverend Raphael Warnock, down in Atlanta, and to pull Herschel into that race, and the man can't even Yoji, you got it right. He can't even complete a sentence. You look at the ridiculous kind of stuff, and people are propping him up from the Republican side, not because he's qualified, not because he's got good positions or has done service. It's because he's Black, and they figure one Black person equals another Black person. You got two of them, so it's going to make it hard, and they don't understand how much people are there on the issues. And then you got our sister Stacey Abrams down there too, running for governor. And if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be her. That woman is powerful. She is sharp. She was that way in school too. But it is amazing watching the kinds of stuff that gets put out there in order to try to intimidate us, because they cannot do things fairly. They do not want fair races.
There's been a number of misinformation campaigns that have been out for the last couple of years that I expect to see again around the threat of intimidation of Black voters. So there's one specific text that I see every couple of months that says, the local NAACP has reported white nationalists are going to pick up Black men tonight. Stay away from your polling stations or XYZ. So that's something that I've seen multiple times over the course of the last 2 years, actually since the George Floyd murder happened. And I just want to say that be aware of those misinformation campaigns, because yes, you should always be aware of your surroundings and your safety. But also, sometimes these are lies to make sure that you stay home on these important elections.
Brenda,
but who do we get to work in the voting polls? I mean, who's going to be there? They're going to be afraid to be there.
Exactly.
And the headlines are how QAnon, is it QAnon? Is that how you pronounce it?
It's QAnon.
They have raised so much money It's unbelievable. They were talking about that last night. They said people are afraid of them and the power and the numbers that they have collected in the numbers of money.
I think that there should be a lot of efforts actually to get Black people to be polling judges and also to be observers. And, you know, I would suggest to, you know, the NAACP even nationally to take up such an effort for trainings to become polling judges and trainings to be polling observers, because just as we can expect, I mean, I'm in Florida right now, right? I can expect, and we saw even with our primaries, that there were white supremacists and Proud Boys outside of our election, or outside of the polls. We can expect
that, Angela, really.
Yeah, we can expect that only to continue, but it's up to us to organize better and to have better protection plans and protection networks. So that's something that is a new word in the U.S., protection network. But in other parts of the world, Black activists specifically have protection networks, and they look like things that we've had previously. If you think about Malcolm X and you know, the Nation of Islam, of phone trees, of just calling people, of checking in. If you see something, you know who to call. You're calling the Nation of Islam, and you're calling your brother. You have 5 people, and those 5 people have more 5 people, and that's how word spreads. You have a place to stay if things are dangerous. And get get spicy, but you know, that's a young person phrase. But if
spicy is good.
Yeah, if things start popping off, right? Like, you have a place to stay. So that's what we need, unfortunately, and we need to start organizing around that mentality that the U.S. that we know is not the U.S. that we're going into.
2 things. One is that I was in a meeting this morning with Batala and one of our customers, and they mentioned an app that some Black lawyers developed called, I think, a left turn or right turn. Anybody familiar with that? Angela, I thought you might be. But apparently it's a app where if you are riding, driving, walking, and you see that you're about to be stopped by an officer, hit the button, hit the app, and within seconds, 3 or 4 lawyers are online with you with either recorded or live information for you on how to maintain and protect yourself, to know your rights in the encounter that you feel is going to happen. That's one. That's great, I think. And it gets you connected to legal representation right away. Maybe it also allows the officer to know that you have a lawyer on the phone, and that might help mitigate the officer's behavior. Maybe not, but at least there's a witness that you've created. The other app, we interviewed a gentleman last week, Brenda and I did. The app is called 12 Watch. I asked him, 12 Watch, what does that mean? 12 o'clock, whatever. He said, well, the kids call 12 the police. I didn't know that when I was a kid. 50 was the number or the name for the police, but apparently the young people are saying 12 is the number that they use to refer to police. 12 watches. How do you watch what police are doing in your community and around you? And the principle for this app is that on your phone, you drive from downtown to North Minneapolis 4th Precinct. The app will tell you, based on your GPS location, which officers are on duty at this time who have rap sheets, meaning legal charges against them. And at least you know that there are people in your near surroundings who have a proclivity or history, a documented history for which complaints have been filed. So those are 2 things I think are interesting.
I think it's
and
great.
Angela, they speak to the same concept of how do we use technology to have, what was the word you used? Protection
networks. It's a human rights word from my human rights classes.
Okay, protection networks.
Hey, cool. AL, in your keyboard, you know, the F12.
Yeah, that's where it came from. F12, right? In the protest. Listen, we're almost out of time. Let me go around and ask what you guys are reading. what you're thinking about. Yogi, do we have this Saturday? Is there going to be a meeting of the BDA? I think is that this Saturday, the first of every month.
I am not aware, but I will contact them to figure out. I did send actually the link for today for this show to them today.
Okay.
But I'm not aware.
Okay.
This weekend
BDA is
have,
Brazilian. I was telling our friends what BDA stands for. It's
this is Brazilian Descendants Association in Lagos.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And
There is
Yogi
a large
invited me to a meeting of
of,
that group last month. It was excellent, wonderful.
Yeah, there's a large group of enslaved people that returned from. Actually, they are descended from returnees from Brazil and Cuba, but majority are Cuban, and they are called Popo Aguda people in Nigeria, or the Afro-Brazilians. And it's funny, they identify themselves in Nigeria as Brazilian, and what it is, 3 or 4 generations later, right? Because this movement was in the end of the 19th century of returning to Africa. And those same communities of returnees we have in Lagos, we have in Ghana, they call the Tabon people, and we have in Benin, they are called Aguda too. Yep.
Okay, cool.
And just before you go, I think I sent you this article, L, that here now they're trying to to pass a law prohibiting Confederate symbols in Brazil, because we have a large population of descendants of Confederated people, which Americans don't have an idea. So in the end of the American Civil War, around 80,000 white Southerners moved to Brazil because it still was a slave country. We have a city in the state of São Paulo, which is the industrial engine of Brazil. It's called Americana. And the other city is called something of some saint name. But there is a city here called Americana, and they are founded by descendants of those Confederate people that didn't want to continue with their privileges. They moved to Brazil, and they have a large community here of their descendants. You know, one of our rock stars, she's an old lady now. She's a direct descendant of Robert Lee. Her name is Rita Lee. You know, so there is a lot of these oddities here also in Brazil. These odd relationships between Brazil and the U.S. You know,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Angela, what you reading? Oh, Angela, the loser. I think I lost her. Jonathan, how about you? What's on your reading book stand?
I am reading The Other History of the DC Universe. It is a graphic novel by John Ridley, and it is exploring the DC universe. That's where, you know, Superman, Batman, all of those superheroes, but through the lens of Black history, Black culture. So it's looking at what was going on with Black Lightning, what was going on with the history and how that interacted. So it's really intriguing. I'm just starting it all together, but it takes a look through that lens, which is something that comics had not done before. You know, comics didn't.
What's the name of this book?
The Other History of the DC Universe. It's Black perspective and looking at it through that lens. You know, when you look at the fact that comics start really in 1938 with Superman, and it's not till Black Panther in 1966 that we actually get a Black superhero in the comics. And DC has always been kind of behind Marvel. Marvel always leads the pack. And so a lot of them are starting to go back and try to redress some of that wrong. So I think this is a good effort. And the comics are also doing covers that go in line with Black History Month or Pride Month or Latino History Month. And so they'll go ahead, although they got in trouble, DC, with the Latino one. But they highlight on the covers, the characters from that particular demographic. So,
Yoji, turn your camera sideways. You're looking sideways. There you go. Yeah, Angela, what you reading? We're over time, but let's finish up. What are you reading, Angela? Anything new?
No, I'm not reading anything new, but I'm happily in a Afrocentric religion course that was
Go ahead.
It's being brought on. It's called African Traditional Religions, and it's actually been put on by a priestess, and her name is actually Boku Hudu on social media. And do I recommend you just take anybody's course on social media? No. But she also has a PhD from Temple, and she's one of those folks that I really enjoy following. Her PhD is at Temple is from the African Studies Department, and so Boku Hudu.
How you spell it?
The French way of Boku, Beaucoup, and then Hudu, Hoodoo. You can find her on Instagram, and she has a course.
Is she Haitian, or is it Haitian based?
Yes, so she's Haitian-based religion. Also, she talks about the Gullah-Geechee religions, and then voodoo in Cuba and in New Orleans. And so she talks about a lot of different things when it comes to West African religions. And I can't say that I've gotten very far in her course yet. I've just been living my life. And so that's one of the things of going to a free course. I don't make all of the course meetings.
Thank you, Angela. Brenda, close it with you.
Before we get off, celebrate Serena Williams. And pray for her tomorrow. She is defying the odds. And
tell us more about that.
Well, she,
close with that. What's the status of her play?
Well, she beat the number 2 seed yesterday. And was it yesterday? Yeah. And I woke up because I wouldn't watch it. I was chicken, and I got up, I recorded it, and then I got up and watched it when I found out that she won. But to watch her, and you know what was so interesting? She said this is the first time she got the X off her back, and that she could play free. And, ever since she was 16 years old, she has had that X on her back.
Meaning and, she feeling like a target? Is that what she meant by that?
What yeah, the N word all the time, heckling. I mean, unbelievable. But, even if she doesn't win tomorrow, and I'm saying she will, and I kind of think, and Angela might agree with me, that she planned this. She hadn't done that much. And I think she's got a wonderful coach. And so I think she's like, I'm coming out this last time and I'm going to kick. And so I'm praying for her because she's phenomenal. There will be no others like Venus and Serena.
Here we go. Well, that's it for today. Brother Yoji, thank you. Angela Rose, thank you. Brenda Lyle-Gray, thank you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.